You haven't eaten a cooked meal in 4 days. You are still riding. Your army has crossed more ground in a week than a marching legion could cover in a month, and not a single supply wagon trails behind you. So, what exactly is keeping you alive? 800 years ago, the answer to that question built the largest land empire the world has ever seen. People remember the Mongol bow. They remember the horse. They almost never ask the simplest question of all. What did these people actually eat? Because the food came first. Before the conquests, before the law, before the empire, there was a diet built by the steppe itself. And once you understand it, you understand how a few 100,000 herders outrode, outlasted, and outfought the richest civilizations on Earth. Let's start where the Mongols started, with the animals. On the steppe, your wealth walks on four legs. The Mongols counted their entire world in what they called the Tavan Koshu Mal, the five muzzles, the five kinds of herd animal that made life possible: the horse, the cow or yak, the camel, the sheep, and the goat. You do not plant fields. You do not store grain in a barn. You follow the grass, and your animals turn that grass into everything you need. That is the first thing to understand. Your food is alive, and it moves when you move. In summer, you barely touch meat at all. You live on what the Mongols called the white foods. Milk in every form a herder can imagine. Fresh milk, soured milk, yogurt, butter, soft cheese, and hard-dried curds you can carry in a bag and gnaw on for weeks on the trail. A Flemish friar named William of Rubruck rode all the way to the Mongol capital at Karakorum in the 1250s, and there he watched them make the most famous drink on the steppe. They called it Airag. You might know it by its other name, Kumis. It is mare's milk, poured into a great leather skin and beaten for hours until it ferments into a tart, fizzing, mildly alcoholic drink. Rubruck wrote that it bit the tongue going down and left a taste a little like almond milk, and that the Mongols drank it by the bowlful from morning on. One mare could keep you supplied all through the warm months. The horse you rode into battle was also, quietly, feeding you. And then there was a rule: the dried curd. You boil and strain the milk, press the solids, cut them into chunks, and leave them on the roof of your tent to harden in the sun and wind until they are as tough as stone. Dried this way, the curds barely spoil. They keep for months, even years. A small sack of them is a brick of pure protein and fat you can carry into any winter or any campaign, and you eat them slowly, softening each piece in your mouth as you ride. Long before anyone wrote the word, the Mongols had invented the survival ration. So where did the bloodthirsty meat-eater reputation come from? From winter. When the grass dies and the mares stop milking, everything changes, and now you eat the red foods. Meat. Mostly mutton, sometimes goat, sometimes horse, and you waste almost none of the animal. The fat, the organs, the blood, the marrow, all of it boiled in a pot with melted snow for water. A Franciscan named John of Plano Carpini, sent by the Pope to the Mongols in the 1240s, wrote that they would eat nearly anything that walked, and that in a hard season nothing at all was beneath them. Carpini also recorded something that horrified him. On a long ride, a Mongol could open a small vein in his horse's neck, drink a mouthful of warm blood, and close the wound again, taking food from the animal without killing it. Marco Polo claimed the same thing a generation later, and added that a rider could push for 10 days on milk and blood alone, never once stopping to light a fire. You should be careful with these stories. Foreign visitors were frightened men describing a people they did not understand, and some of their accounts grew taller in the retelling. Blood was an emergency ration, not a daily breakfast. But the heart of it was true, and the heart of it was the whole secret. Here is that secret. The Mongol army carried its food on the hoof. So let's reconstruct a single day on campaign. You wake before dawn. You ride not with one horse, but with a string of them, sometimes 5, sometimes more. You have mares among them for milk. You have meat walking at your side. In your saddlebag, you carry borts, dried meat that has been shredded and pounded down until a whole side of an animal shrinks into a pouch of powder. When the column halts, you drop a fistful of it into your iron helmet, add water and a handful of snow, and within minutes you have a hot, salty broth. No fire to light. No cart to wait for. No baker, no mill, no oven anywhere for 1,000 miles. Now picture your enemy on that same morning. A settled army of the age moved at the speed of its slowest wagon. It needed bread, which needed grain, which needed mills and ovens and roads and a long, fragile tail of carts crawling along behind the soldiers. Cut that tail. and the army starved within days. The Mongols had no tail to cut. They were the supply line. They could appear over a horizon where no army on Earth should have been able to travel because they had never been waiting on bread in the first place. Can you feel how completely that changes a war? This is why the numbers from the conquest sound almost impossible. Historians estimate that a Mongol column, switching between its string of fresh horses, could cover 60, 80, sometimes nearly 100 miles in a single day and keep doing it for days on end. When Subutai and Batu swept into Hungary and Poland in 1241, they struck two kingdoms hundreds of miles apart almost at once, moving faster than the warnings could travel ahead of them. No bread-fed army could have done that. The speed was not magic. It was breakfast. It goes further still. To feed and to train at the same time, the Mongols held the Nurj, a great hunt in which thousands of riders formed an enormous ring across the steppe and slowly closed it, driving every animal inside toward the center until the kill. The Persian historian Juvayni, who wrote his History of the World Conqueror while serving the Mongols, described these hunts as rehearsals for war. The same discipline that could surround a herd of deer would one day surround a city. And that is the dark side of this story, the side you should not look away from. An army that feeds itself can go anywhere, and where it went, people died. The Mongols besieged cities and severed them from the fields and herds that fed them, then let hunger finish what the sword had begun. When Baghdad fell in 1258, one of the great cities of the world was emptied of its people. The very mobility that makes you marvel at the logistics is the mobility that made the conquest so total. These were not gentle herders on a long picnic. The diet that kept them alive also helped them end the lives of others on a scale the world had never seen. Behold that thought against this one. The historian Jack Weatherford has argued that the Mongols did not only destroy, they connected, and nowhere is that clearer than at the table. Once the empire stretched from the coast of Korea to the edge of Europe, food began to move along its roads as freely as armies once had. The historian Timothy May has shown how the Mongol trade and postal networks carried not just messages, but ingredients, recipes, and entire tastes across thousands of miles of road that had never been safe to travel before. There is a book that proves it. Around 1330, a court physician named Hu Sihui compiled a dietary manual for the Mongol emperors of China, the Yinshan Jingyao, the proper and essential things for the emperor's food and drink. Its recipes read like a map of the empire laid out on a plate. Mongol mutton and dairy sit beside Chinese grains, Persian spices, and Central Asian noodles, all simmering at one royal table. The people remembered as the destroyers of cities had built, almost by accident, one of the first truly continent-spanning cuisines in history. So which were they? The blood drinkers of Carpini's nightmares, or the careful gourmets of Hui's cookbook? They were both, and the bridge between the two was always the food. The same portable, self-sufficient, animal-powered diet that let them conquer an empire was the diet that, once the conquering slowed, let that empire trade and eat and mix across the widest stretch of land ever ruled by a single people. The herder's pouch of dried curd and the emperor's spiced banquet are the same story told at two different ends of an empire. Now look down at your own hands. When you pack for a long flight, a long hike, a long shift with no time to stop, what do you reach for? Something dried. Something light. Something dense with energy that needs no fire and no kitchen and will survive in a bag for weeks. Jerky? A trail mix. A protein bar. The exact logic the Mongols lived and conquered by 800 years ago, you now carry in your pocket without ever thinking about where it came from. You will eat a cooked meal tonight. You did not ride 4 days through the cold to earn it. But the next time you tear open something dried and portable just to keep yourself moving, remember what that simple choice once made possible. The steppe is still riding with you. It always was.